the county executive budget forums, but also during the council sessions, because the county council needs your feedback and your input as they craft and shape and determine the county's FY27 operating budget. Many of you may or may not be part of a board, committee, or commission, but I invite you to join them as well, especially when there are challenges or concerns in our senior community. And then last but not least, send your emails and your letters to our elected and appointed officials, because we like to hear from you. We like to get a sense of what those challenges are, and it's much appreciated. Now I'd like to bring the chief of our Aging and Disability Services up, Dr. Patrice McGee, to talk about age-friendly Montgomery. It is the 10th year, our 10th year anniversary, and I'll let her share some of the good things that we've done over the past 10 years. Dr. McGee.
Good afternoon, everyone. So happy to be here with you this afternoon. I just want to lift up our 10-year anniversary of our Age-Friendly initiative. Is anyone familiar with Age-Friendly? Raise hand, show of hands. Great, couple in the room. So Age-Friendly is a global initiative that the county joined 10 years ago. It started with the World Health Organization and AARP. It is an intentionality around ensuring communities are ready for individuals at every stage and phase of life, especially older adults. And so the way that we accomplish that here in Montgomery County is we have 10 domains that we focus on, which are civic and social involvement, communication and outreach, elder abuse awareness, employment, health and wellness, home and community-based services, housing, planning, open spaces, parks and community buildings, public safety, transportation and mobility. So you heard several domains there. We work across several industries to ensure that our community is age-friendly. One of the things that we're doing now that we're 10 years into this initiative, we are focused on doing a community needs assessment. And so you'll see this QR code. We are encouraging everyone to do the needs assessment. It's going to help inform the work as we move forward. Over the last 10 years, we've been able to add routes to our transportation services, offer free services to seniors on our ride-on. We've worked to distribute technology equipment to older adults, both tablets and Chromebooks, to bridge the digital divide. So those are some of the things that we've been able to do through our age-friendly initiative, and we want to grow that. We want to take it a step further. So I encourage everyone to scan this QR code at some point and make sure that you take that that survey. It'll take you about 5 to 7 minutes to complete, but it's very, very important that we capture the needs and hear the voices of all the residents here in the county. So before I pass it back to Dr. Bridgers, I do want to highlight the Aging and Disability Services leadership staff that are in the room. We have in the back Mario Wersussen, who is the Adult Protective Services, Case Management Services Senior Administrator. And then we have Ms. Kim Mayo, who is our Community Support Network for People with Disabilities Senior Administrator. So just wanted to make sure that you knew they were in the room, and we will be around for questions as well. So I'll pass it back to Dr. Bridgers.
Thank you, Dr. McGee. I also want to recognize Ms. Jennifer Bryant, who is the Director of our Office Management and Budget. Thank you again for joining us. And without further delay, it's my pleasing duty to ask County Executive Elrich to come forward for his presentation, along with Council Vice President Will Jawando for his remarks. Thank you again.
I'll let Will just say hi to you all, and then I will go back to my presentation.
Thank you, County Executive. I'll be very brief. I'm Will Jawando. I'm the Vice President of the County Council. We're 2 of the 12 people who decide how to spend your $8 billion that you're going to talk about here on the operating budget side, and then just under $6 billion on the capital side, which is police stations, libraries, roads, and the et cetera. These are super important sessions. That's why I wanted to stop by to hear directly from our community about what they want to see in our budget at a very challenging time. I've never been more proud to be living and from Montgomery County, where we're really trying to take care of all of our residents at a really tough time at the federal level. I want to thank the county executive and all of the executive agencies who are here. Make sure you visit all of them because we're here to support you at a very, very difficult time. As you'll see reflected in the budget, his agency heads are going to present a budget to us on the council at March 15th. Then we start our work. The capital budget will come on January 15th. That's the capital side. So we're here to listen and watch as well. And I'm an at-large member of the council, so if you need anything as well, please reach out to me or my office. So thank you, and enjoy the budget presentation from our county executive. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's a little warmer today. So those of you who had to walk over here, hopefully it wasn't torture. The other couple of days were pretty much torture. Good to see everyone here. And I'm just going to kind of lead you through where we are in making the budget and then take questions from you just so you understand what we're dealing with. The first slide up there is, there are two budgets in this county. There's a capital budget and an operating budget. Capital is buildings and buses and all physical things. And operating is all the people who go into making something work. So all the people you see here from the different departments, they're the operating expenses and the things like fuel and everything else that takes to make that work. And capital is, like I said, the buses and buildings we build. The schools are under in our budget. I think I'm out of operating. They are over half of our budget, and you'll see that in the slide down the road. So the schools are a huge part of Montgomery County's budget. The process we're going through, when I had first gotten elected, the process was that you did a community forum after the budget was put together. And I didn't think that was very helpful to ask people what they thought if I've already done it. So we moved the budget forums to the front of the budget process. And so we did, in the summer, we did the capital budget. And now in the fall, we started doing the operating budget. So this is your opportunity to see how we're putting this together. Between September and November, we do the community engagement. I think I'm doing 12 of these. This is number 10, and I think I have 2 more left, if I'm not mistaken. 1 in Silver Spring and 1 with the Asian community. I'm doing it in 3 languages. That should be fun. Between November and January, our folks put together, start looking at the requests from departments as well as the requests that come out of these meetings. And between December and February, we'll also complete the budget and get it over to the council. And then it goes to the council on March 15th, and this all gets done by the end of May. And it'll be an interesting budget year. I think we're dealing with a lot of unknowns. Like, I feel pretty good about where we are this year. The things we were worried about Trump doing, he didn't do fast enough to destroy the universe. And so we were able to get through this year pretty much intact on revenues, but we began seeing job losses in the summer with all the mass layoffs. And so we're looking, I think at some point recently it was like 6,000 people in the county who are victims of layoffs from the feds, but there's ripple effect through the private sector. So there are job losses here. Why that matters is anybody who loses a job and doesn't get a replacement job, their incomes just went down by the cost of that. And of course, if their incomes go down, their income tax goes down, which means we have less money to pay for things. So all this, whatever he does there has a ripple effect here. Some of his cuts, fortunately, which got delayed, he has a plan to cut almost all funding for homelessness. And he's expecting people to just go into treatment. There are no treatment centers, and to get off the street, and there's no place to put them. There's no housing. So I don't know exactly how he thinks he's going to achieve any of these things, but it's going to be a problem if the money's not there and we're left to perform miracles. And I have limited the powers assigned to me, and miracles is not one of those powers. I'm going to talk a bit about our priorities for the older population. In FY26, we further increased senior nutrition services at the new Silver Spring Recreation and Aquatic Center, so people can come in there and get meals. We added that to the program there. There are now multiple centers in the county where seniors can get support. We increased funding to maintain countywide senior nutrition service levels. amidst rising food costs, which means we put enough money in to offset the effects of inflation. And we've supported affordable senior housing projects, including the Seabury and Silver Spring and the Sanctuary in Tacoma Park. There are other affordable housing projects slated for seniors. Some of them are going to be generally available to people, but what we're seeing, unfortunately, is very expensive senior care facilities that cost on the order of $10,000 or $12,000 a month, and that is clearly out of reach for so many of our seniors. That cannot be the only answer to senior housing. There has to be other forms of support for seniors. Next, we've put in $89 million to serve older adults. About $41 million goes to Health and Human Services for Medicaid programs and senior nutrition. There's 29.6 in Housing and Community Affairs, including affordable senior housing development. The county often steps in to provide funds to help bring the cost of the project down so that the rents are affordable. We've got $10.3 million in transportation for a call-in ride and Medicaid transport program, so we help people get transport when they don't have the ability to transport themselves. We have $4.6 million for recreation programs in our senior centers, and we have $2.1 million for services in other departments like fire safety, State's Attorney's Office. State's Attorney's Office does investigations and does education programs for seniors on how not to be taken advantage of by scams. If you've ever been to the one they do at Holiday Park, it's a senior event for the whole county, and it's pretty effective. And we have $1.5 million that goes to community grants, and those are grants that nonprofits that serve the senior community come to us for, and that's money we put out to them. This gives you an idea of what we've invested in affordable housing. We have put $293 million into affordable housing between FY23 and FY25. And we do this because the private sector will not build a stick of affordable housing on their own. They just won't do it. And so the only affordable housing we get in the county is when they build, they have a requirement to either build 12.5 or 15% affordable, which means affordable to people making about $65,000, $70,000. It leaves out the people making $50,000 or less. That's our effort to supplement. When we get deeper affordability, the county will pay a developer to bring down the affordability to even lower levels, and we do that. We spend millions of dollars buying down the rents in buildings so the rents stay affordable. And if we didn't do that, we'd have a lot more homeless people than we have today, or you'd have families. We already have at least 50,000 families who spend half their income on housing. And that's a pretty alarming statistic, and it doesn't leave much money for anything else. Between FY23, we did 975 affordable project units, 1133 last year, and 1948 in 2025, and these are things that are largely driven by us. If this was 15% of market, we would never get there. So this is a lot more than 15% of the market units we get from developers. This is deliberate efforts on our part. We've opened up on Veers Mill Road in Randolph. There's a 200-unit project up there that was all affordable. When we do projects, we try to make them all affordable, skew them toward lower and middle income folks, because those are the folks that have the hardest time finding housing in this market. And you can see on the chart what changed. I come into office in FY19, and you can see where the investments have gone since 2019. We recognize this as a serious problem. We've treated it as a serious problem. I used to say when I was on the council that, you can't declare there's a housing crisis for 40 years and do nothing about it. If you haven't solved it in 40 years, it wasn't much of a crisis. So we're trying to step up and keep more money flowing into these programs. Next. Who's doing next? Is your clicker misbehaving? Wow. Okay, try this one. Okay, I'll do it myself. Our priorities, have really focused around health and human services. Our spending in health and human services is up about 70% from when I came into office. That is far more than what inflation's been, but it sort of reflects our recognition of the issues in the community. We've enhanced and expanded Montgomery Cares and Care for Kids to ensure long-term sustainability of their programs. We rely a lot on nonprofits for support in this county. And we do that because they're organizations created by people who are on a mission to serve communities and help people. And frankly, because they're not government workers, they do not get the wages that government workers get. We are fortunate that so many people are willing to work for less to do something good, because it helps us buoy the work that we do. If we had to pay what we pay for everything that we're getting from the nonprofits, we would do far less. So we'd not be as effective as we are. So the nonprofits are really important to us. We've increased support for developmental disability and adult medical daycare providers. Adult medical daycare providers especially are hit because of limits in Medicaid on how much that they can be paid for the services that don't cover the cost of services that are provided by these centers. And to raise the rates on the residents to pay the difference can be really challenging. So the county helps out to make sure that these centers have the ability to pay their staff and continue operating. We've expanded school health services. A lot of people in this county don't have access to health care, and schools are the way to reach children more than anything else we can do. So we've expanded services there. And we've increased support for people at risk of or experiencing homelessness, and by $39 million between 2019 and 2025. That's a lot of money to go into homelessness. And I read this morning that the president is talking about dismantling about $3.2 billion of money that goes to people funding homeless programs. And his bright idea is that he would mandate that if you get support, you have to volunteer to go into mental health facility or alcohol detox facility. That would be nice if we had the facilities. We don't have the facilities, so we have no idea where they're going to go unless he's going to give us the money to build them. And they still need housing. Even if they're going in for treatment, it doesn't change the fact that they need housing. And we have a housing first policy in this county that we know that if we get people in housing, it can shorten their time of homelessness, but also for many families, they lost their house because you had a car repair you couldn't afford and you couldn't get your car running, you couldn't get to work, and you lost your job. Those people don't need to be permanently supported. They need a bridge to get their feet back on the ground and be able to make money and have enough money spare that they can take care of some repairs and go back to doing what they were doing. And we try to plug these holes. And what the president's going to do is just rip this wide open. And this is one of the things we're really worried about. The fact that he's talking about that now is especially alarming to us. But this is a man who held feeding people hostage to get his bill passed. He was willing to have people go hungry and without food in order to get his bill. And the only purpose of that bill is to give tax cuts to billionaires. It's not like he figured out a better way of doing things and he's trying to save money. He's flat out trying to rip the people of this country off so that his billionaire friends can get tax cuts. And that's all this is. And nobody should be confused about what his intentions are and who benefits and who loses in this game. Next, we've continued to focus on public safety. It continues, it's always going to be an issue. We've increased our emergency medical services. We've added new duty officers, chase cars, and ambulances. One of the things that we've tried to do is the fire department in the county was built on the basis of responding to fires. Nowadays, we respond to very few fires. Fires are less than, somewhere around 20% of all the calls. Almost 80% of the calls are medical. And traditionally, every time we saw a need because of more calls, we were building fire stations. And we came to realize I don't need a fire station everywhere. I need more ambulances on the ground. So we've added ambulances and we have chase vehicles. And the chase vehicles aren't anchored in a particular location, they can be out in the county and they can be deployed where there's the highest number of calls to make sure we can respond to those calls rather than being fixed to a station. And we hope to continue to expand the chase services because having ambulances in the community is what we really need. I don't need to build a very expensive fire station with all the equipment just to get an ambulance out. So we're looking at how we shift that. And it makes sense because the department's gone to primarily doing healthcare, and fires are a very small part of what we do. We've taken steps to improve police recruitment and retention. We obviously lost a lot of officers. The George Floyd murder and the other events that happened, put policing under a microscope, and Montgomery County was no exception to that. And a lot of the officers feel that, they were unfairly characterized, but, the reality of policing in this country is that, it has had problems and certainly had racial problems, and there's been a backlash. And I think the county, to the credit of the police department, we undertook a bunch of reforms, and this department did it in a pretty solid way. But a lot of the officers just don't feel respected. They feel like I go out in the streets and, people tell me they hate me and, they show disrespect, and people don't want to put their life on the line if they feel like what they get mostly from people is disrespect. It's not a good thing. And we've tried to, help them. I think the reforms we made are positive. I think the use of body cameras and the expanded use of body cameras is a good thing because it protects both the police officer and the person the police officer encounters. It keeps either one of them from making up a story about what happened. And so I think actually has helped us reduce the number of complaints we get from people about police service because you can't complain if you know you're on camera and nothing happens. So that's been a benefit. We've also, working with the University of Maryland, we have a requirement that officers have to have 60 credits before they can become a police officer. So that means that if you don't get those 60 credits and you want to be a police officer, it would take you about 2 years part-time. It would take you longer than that, 2 years full-time student, 2 years, 1 year as a part-time, no, longer than that as a part-time student to get those credits. They could go to Fairfax County and get hired tomorrow without the college credits. So our college credits have been a barrier. We worked at the University of Maryland, they came out and looked at our program, our training program, and they decided that they could give 60 credits to a police officer for going through our training program, which means now somebody can come into the department with no degree and no college credits, go through our training. If they go through the training successfully, they get that 60 credit degree, which means we can hire them then, not have to wait several years. And this will be the first year we try that out. We expect that to improve enrollment. The state also has a stupid rule that if you smoked marijuana in the last 3 years, you can't be a police officer. Again, you could go to Fairfax County and have gotten stoned yesterday and apply for a job today, and they don't ask any questions about it. So, we're going to modernize our rules and not hold it against people for having smoked marijuana. It is legal in the state of Maryland. And, we don't do the same thing for people who drink, which I would argue is far more dangerous than in society than marijuana was. And it's just something that has kept people from coming here. Because again, they can go to Virginia and they don't have that problem. They come here and it's like, we won't take you. So we're looking to change that. The state is interested in changing that. Those two things should really help us with recruitment and retention. We have a real-time intelligence center. We have these drones that we've deployed in parts of the county. We have one in Silver Spring, one in Bethesda, one in Germantown, Gaithersburg, Silver Spring, Bethesda, one in Wheaton. And we're going to go and expand beyond that. And what the drones do, if they get a call for service, they can put a drone in the air and get it to where the call came from faster than police officers can frequently get there because they fly over buildings and police officers don't, and they don't deal with traffic. And one of the things that's been effective is that if they get to the scene of a crime and they see the perpetrator, they can actually follow the perpetrator and follow him until and let the police know where that person's going until the police get there and take them. My favorite story is somebody robbed somebody and got on a bus, and the drone saw the bus, called in what bus it was, and then the police took them off at the next stop. And so it's really helped us. And it's, our goal has been particularly to let people know, do not come to Montgomery County. A lot of our crime comes from people who come here from outside Montgomery County. And our goal is to make it really clear, don't come here to do this because we're serious about prosecuting. We're serious about finding you. And we're employing technology. We have cameras at a level that, they have license plate readers on them. So we're catching stolen vehicles. Cars come across the district line, cars come from other parts of Montgomery County, that license plate gets read. It's a stolen vehicle. They're able to stop those cars, and it's helping us. And I think we're sending the signal. This is not a good place to do this stuff. There are other ways to earn a living. Those might be preferable. We've certainly enhanced our community safety infrastructure. We now have mobile crisis teams. And if we get a call, one of the problems that has always been with police departments, they're asked to solve social problems. So somebody's having a mental health breakdown, somebody's drunk, somebody's on drugs. These do not require police officers. They require social workers, and they require having a facility where you can take people who are in crisis, and that's not a jail. Nobody recovers from their problems in a jail. That's not a safe haven for people. So we've enhanced our programs. We have 7 teams countywide right now. And so when they get a call and the call relates, then you can tell really clearly it's a homeless person or somebody with an emotional issue. As long as there's no weapons involved, we can send these teams, and sometimes they go with police and sometimes they go without police, but they can be the first responders, the first people who interact with the people who are in crisis, and it's helped us divert people from the jail. We're also in the process of building sort of a restoration center, and the center's going to have 2 doors. If we pick you up and it's drug involved or it's alcohol involved, you have the choice of going to jail, or you have the choice of going into a treatment facility, and those 2 doors will be in the same building. And we're pretty sure that more people are going to choose treatment over jail, and it does not make sense to criminalize everything. When you think about jail, sometimes people get all excited about sending something to jail. It's really great. We arrested them, we put them in jail. We don't think about the long-term consequences. You get a criminal record, you may not find any landlord who rents to you, and you may not find anybody who will give you a job, because people can find out what your criminal record is. We have banned the box in Montgomery County, which means you can't have a box on the job application that says, was I ever arrested for anything? But it doesn't stop people from being able to track court records to see if people were arrested. And people get denied jobs because of that. So when we think about, the importance of enforcement and putting people in jail, we have to account for the fact that these become lifetime sentences to some degree. And is that what we really want to do? Do we want to rehabilitate people, or do we want to put them in jail for 6 months and then have to deal with them for the rest of their lives because they can't get a job and can't earn a living in a decent way? And so we've put a lot of emphasis on that. I hope we continue to do more of that. I think it's important to rehabilitate people. I will say, and I come from the left, so not many people would say this, but I think our jail is one of the best jails in the country, because there's more emphasis on rehabilitation there than any jail I can think of in any jail I've been to, not as a inmate, but as a visitor. I've not seen things like what we do in our jail. One of the things we reopened was we had a bakery in the jail before the recession, and people worked in the bakery, were trained in the bakery, and then got hired when they left jail by companies that wanted people who had been trained in our bakery. And that got shut down during the recession. It stayed shut down until I became county executive. And I told them to put it back in, because this is the exact kind of program you want so people can actually get jobs. So now we've got our jail programs back. The county's now using them to provide refreshments, and we do events. They cater other people as well. So if you're doing an event and you want some, the service is called Sweet Release. And it's a good program. You can help folks in the county who are recovering, and you can get really good food because the food is really good. And we're looking at expanding what they do so they can actually possibly go into more catering. And the people who work there are really proud of the work they do, and they have a level of confidence that when they're done with the jail, they're going to be able to go out and get a job. We also have a pre-release center in Montgomery County. So people who haven't served their full sentence but are deemed ready to work and kind of return to society, they stay in the release center, but then they go out. Employers who call us and ask us for people from our release center because we've done a good enough job in rehabilitation in the jail that the people in the release center are there because A, they want to be working and they want to stay working. They're not looking for a return to the previous life. And all this stuff's important because you don't have a job, you don't get housing. And so if you have the combination of a jail sentence and you don't have housing, then you're just going to be more of a social problem. And there are ways to address that. And we ought to focus on addressing it rather than punishing people. I was never a big fan of punishment. We've changed our transportation policies a little bit. This year is the first year of zero fares. We're expanding the Flash Bus Rapid Transit on Route 29. There's going to be a connector that we start work on in earnest this year between Veers Mill Road and 355. It'll go from connect the red line from the metro station in Wheaton to Metro in Rockville, but then also go to Montgomery College. That's the first line that'll be in. We have service on New Hampshire Avenue, and Colesville Road, but it's lame and it's not really bus rapid transit. It rides in the curb north of New Hampshire Avenue, but it rides in mixed traffic south of New Hampshire Avenue, which is kind of like hell. And so you don't go anywhere fast, and it shouldn't be called bus rapid transit, and I've never let them call it that. But we have a plan to actually put a reversible lane in there, which will get us a transit system on New Hampshire, on Colesville Road, and we're looking at expanding it on, the big one will be 355, eventually from Clarksburg all the way down to Bethesda. We have vision, safety, pedestrian investments, and we've put a total of $134 million into this, 63 million in operating and 71 in the CIP. We are still not at zero. And I think everybody understands zero is aspirational. There are a lot of things we need to make things safer. When I came into office, I asked my people to start doing what they did. I saw happening in DC, using these cones to square off the corners. You square off the corners because with curved corners, cars go up to the corner and they just swing around it. With a squared corner, cars actually have to slow down substantially to make that turn. And doing that helps pedestrians, it makes the driver more aware of the pedestrians. It provides a sheltered area between the cones and where the sidewalk is, so it's a benefit to people. So we're also narrowing roads in places, so drivers actually have to slow down. We've dropped speed limits in many places back down to 35. When the speed limit's 45, everybody's doing 60 anyway. It's not good. And none of that helps us deal with the fact there are people who continue to drive drunk. We have people who drive way too fast. We have people who run stop signs and stop lights and are not cognizant of people on the road. And we have pedestrians sometimes who, frankly, have had too much to drink. And they walk out when they shouldn't walk out, or they try crossing mid-block, and all that ends badly. But, we really need our drivers to be more aware of who's on the road, to obey the speed limits, and we're looking at what we can do to improve lighting as well. I've asked them to look at lighting that if somebody does cross mid-block, it would trigger the street light to get more intense, so at least that area gets lit up, so if there's a driver, they have a better chance of seeing somebody. We'll see if we can find that technology. And we're working on Ride On Reimagined. We've expanded our transit services. We have in a couple of places, we have like literally a call and ride service. And I'm hoping we expand that, and I'm hoping we move eventually to electric self-driving buses that can do circuits that are repeated, regular short routes that can collect people out of neighborhoods and take them to main bus stations. The purpose of the bus rapid transit is to create a network which rides on the main roadways. Our ride-on buses, if you've ever had the pleasure of a ride-on bus, you drive through every neighborhood between you and where you're trying to go. It's a long and interesting tourist trip, but it's not as efficient as it should be. So the goal is to have BRT in every major artery, Georgia, Veers Mill, Connecticut, 355, all the majors, and then to have ride-on buses that take people to the stops on the majors so that they can collect you out of a neighborhood, get you to a stop, then get you on a bus that's going to take the long trip to where you're trying to go to, and then you can go back and circulate through the neighborhood. Right now, our buses wander all over the county, and hopefully this will change that. Montgomery County Public Schools have been one of my major priorities, and I'm a former school teacher, and some of you know that I did 17 years, 14 in fourth grade and 3 in fifth grade, and I taught in one of Montgomery County's highest poverty schools. And doing that, you get a firsthand view of what the effects of poverty are on kids, but you also get to see the effects of overcrowded classrooms, teacher shortages, staffing shortages in general, and reductions in funding. And this chart, what it shows, you can tell the difference between the blue lines and the black lines. Is it clear to you guys? So, do I have a little pointy thingy? Do you have a little laser thing? Is it here? Ah, I like this. It's just fun. Okay, so this line here is per pupil spending in Montgomery County from FY01, 2001 to 2026. And this is where we were in 2001. That's where we were in 2010. And then we dropped. And we're higher in absolute numbers, but this blue line is adjusted for inflation. And adjusted for inflation, we have not kept up with inflation. There's a gap. This is this is spending in 2025 dollars. So we are higher here than we were there. We've dropped in our total spending per pupil, and it's a problem. We're still about $2,000 below where $2,200 below where we were in 2010. We've made up a little ground here on the state because the state's not gone up as much as we've gone up. This is when I come into office, and notice the curve changes in 2020 as we began putting more money in the schools to try to deal with the lack of teachers, the poor condition of buildings. Last year was one of several years in a row of very high school increases, and this year the school system's come back to us and said that they're going to have to deal with the condition of the schools in Montgomery County, something they've utterly neglected to do and never asked for the money to do, and then suddenly realized that they need almost $2 billion over the next 20 years or something like that. It's an enormous increase in spending, and we have to deal with it. But I just show that slide to people because I want them to realize, that we're not keeping up with where we're supposed to be. Is this the next one? Yeah, but did I do something wrong? Yes, I did. Yay. Yay. Okay. So I just want you to see the difference between, where we should be, where we peaked at. I did that again. Where we peaked at over here, and where we are today, which is still below that. So we need to do a better job with the schools. You cannot expect, I hear people all the time say, Montgomery County schools aren't what they used to be. They're not what they used to be. Part of it's funding, part of it's just crazy implementation of curriculums that didn't work, being fascinated by the latest book and the latest author with the latest idea that produced no results whatsoever. Maryland went from the 4th school system in the country to the 40th school system in the country. And it's partly an issue of funding, and it's partly an issue of what I would say as a teacher, really bad curriculum decisions. When you're not teaching kids phonics, and you're not teaching kids how to do math, and you think if I teach you the math tables, it's the terrible thing to do to a child, you don't understand how people learn, and you don't understand how it works. And they made a mess out of the curriculum at the state level, and now they're trying to put back together. Now, phonics are back in schools now. They don't call it phonics because that would be too much of it. So they come up with a fancy new word, and I'm sure some author got a lot of money for a new book for rebranding phonics, but they put phonics back in the schools. When they took it out, they said research shows that phonics doesn't work. When they put it back in, they said research shows you should be doing phonics. I got tired of that when I was a teacher. And math is the same way. They got way away from basics. They were sending kids home with third and fourth grade work that their parents couldn't figure out what the teachers were asking for. Nobody should have ever done that to anybody. They've made math far more complicated than it should be. So there are multiple problems, but the lack of funding has been one of the problems, and we're trying to deal with that. So the county and the MCPS were separate but connected. I have absolutely no say over what any decision the school board makes. Zero. Nothing. I can't say this program is a bad program, we want it out. I can't say I want this program in the schools, I want you to do this. We cannot make any systems, any choices for the school board. So all that belongs to the Board of Education. So I don't take any questions about the school system policies, boundary changes, or any of that other stuff, because I have no answers to that, and I have no role in that. But we want people to understand this is the way it's structured. We do have an obligation to give them a certain level of funding they review, and that's set by the state, which was a good thing because the state got tired of people trying to reduce their funding levels. So it's good to have an obligation, but it would be good to have a good system and plans so the money gets well spent. We have part of that portion of the county budget includes Montgomery College. Montgomery College, Park and Planning, and WSSC are all mostly separate from the county government. We make no decisions about WSSC, but we fund it. We make no decisions in Park and Planning. I don't appoint anybody to the planning board. I don't appoint the planning board chair. They operate in their own little world, and we have to fund them, but we have no control over them. So this is the physical context we work in, so you can see the school system is on the right-hand side. That's public schools, MCPS, and that's Montgomery College. Together, they're 54% of our total budget. Next is public safety, police, fire, and corrections. Don't forget the corrections facility. That's a big part of it, plus the courts and everything we fund sits over here. And then everything else in the budget is here. So when people say, you've got this $6 billion budget, why can't you fund something? It's because all this is locked. This is locked because that's money for capital projects. That's pensions and retirement benefits. That's debt service. So all of this budget is locked. And if I want to do something different, I've got to do it inside this tiny little box over there. And so that's where HHS sits. That's where recreation sits. That's where I said Health and Human Services. Housing sits. All our departments sit in this place, and except for the public safety departments. So those are the basic breakdowns in the budget, and HHS consumes most of the budget over there, which makes sense because it's direct services to people. We've got operating challenges in the coming year. So one of them is more people need help. Our homeless population has gone up. The number of people who are showing up at food banks has not diminished since COVID. A lot of people thought, COVID's over, people are getting food now. It's not true. I handed out food this weekend along with some of my staff, and the lines are as bad as they were during COVID. In some places, they're worse. So the needs are still there. Schools are just flat out costing more. And I'll show you a slide about costs, but it just, what we bought 10 years ago, we can't buy today. Inflation has certainly been a factor. I've recommended tax increases that have not been approved by the council, which has led to cuts in services and the inability to deliver things we've been asked to deliver. The job market is not great. Montgomery County's been flat on jobs since the end of the recession. There's been very little job growth in Montgomery County. We've had some, but it's been offset by the loss of 2 big shopping centers, which were major losses of jobs in the county. And Montgomery County struggles to be competitive with other jurisdictions. We are the #3 life sciences center in the country. We've gone from #4 to #3 in the time I've been here. And we think we can go higher, but life sciences cannot drive an entire economy. And you have to have other things in Montgomery County. frankly, is not situated next to two airports and doesn't have a major highway running from, Fairfax County out to Dulles Airport. So we have some disadvantages. We're on the wrong side of the district. We are as close to the district as Virginia is, maybe a little closer because they got to cross a river, and I just have to cross the line at Eastern Avenue or Western Avenue. But even as close as we are, we're not as close as Northern Virginia in terms of being able to get to the jobs in downtown DC. So they have advantages there. And the Pentagon requires that their contractors be within 15 minutes. And that's not Montgomery County. It's longer than 15 minutes. We have federal and state funding challenges. The state, the budget that the governor inherited when he got elected did not have money that everybody thought was in the budget. There was supposed to be an $8 billion transit fund. There was no $8 billion transportation fund. It did not have the money in it. Within weeks, he was told they had miscalculated the appropriation for, I think it was a school service based on income, and it took $1 billion out of the budget right there. They had to add to what the disbursements were. Then the state suffers from the same thing, slow job growth in the state. One of the slower, over time, over the last decade, one of the slower places for job growth. And so we're all struggling with the same things, and there are big revenue swings from high income earners and the federal decisions. Everything that reduces the taxes for the wealthiest has a ripple effect because Maryland's tax structure is based on the federal tax structure. And so those things get passed through to us at the state level, which get passed through to us at a county level. So those are very real challenges. And I don't know what he's going to cut. So we're going into January, and he can't do any RIFs until January 30th now. But we already know all the people he wants to RIF, like a ton of people out of NIH. When he gets done, we could lose 10 to 20,000 employees from Montgomery County alone. So imagine 10 to 20,000 people not bringing in an average of $150,000 a year in income, and what the implications would be for the county in terms of tax revenues. It could be serious. The lack of funding for programs, like he said, if I have immigrants in the Head Start program, then he'll cut off funding for Head Start. Head Start is probably the most important program we do in the schools, along with early childhood education. If you cut off Head Start funding and I can't fund the early childhood programs, you're going to have more kids hitting kindergarten unready to learn. And all the scientific evidence says if you hit kindergarten behind and you have not been brought up at least close to grade level, you don't get caught up the rest of your life. Because as our school system will tell you, a whole bunch of the kids who are 5 years old coming to school actually are functioning at the level of a 3-year-old. All of you have experience with 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds. That is a huge gap between a 3-year-old and 5-year-old. And it's a real disadvantage for those kids. And so if they don't get it right in kindergarten, they struggle to get caught up. And the hole just gets deeper. And, as a teacher, one of the most frustrating things for kids is their sense that they're failures. When you continue to do work and you're not successful at it, you fail. You know you're not getting it. And one of the ways socially, emotionally, the kids protect themselves is by using the defense of, I'm not trying. So when their fellow classmates say their grades, which would be embarrassing, a lot of kids resort to, I don't care. I'm not doing this work. I don't want to do this work. Because that's a defense against being, accused of, well, you're not smart as the rest of them are. As somebody who taught those kids, they could have done anything everybody else did if they'd had the supports they needed. And there's no reason for us to write them off, but you got to invest in the things that make it possible. When I started teaching, I had an aide almost my entire day. When I ended teaching, I had an aide. I was told to pick 45 minutes. Do you want 45 minutes in English or do you want 45 minutes in math? At the same time, when I started teaching, you taught a whole classroom. And you tried to keep one lesson. And I think those of us who are old enough to remember, when everybody was in school had basically the same basic knowledge and language competency, you could teach one lesson across the class. But when you're in a class like my 5th grade class, where kids were functioning at the 1st grade level, all the way up to the 5th grade level, and the school system says you have to have 3 different classes And each lesson becomes 30 minutes. Your 90-minute block for English and math became a 30-minute block for each group of kids. It means that for 60 out of 90 minutes, kids don't even have a teacher. When you had an aide, at least the aide was there to help. When you take the aides out of the classroom and you force teachers to have 3 blocks, you create a real problem in terms of learning. So those are things we have to deal with. These are our recent job numbers, federal impacts. You can see our employment's fell by 14,000 from August 24 to August 25. Thank you, Donald. 56,000 county residents were employed by the federal government as of tax year 23. 15,000 federal jobs lost since January this year. And October 1st, 25 marks the separation of federal employees that took the buyout. So the people that took the buyout, they're gone from the government on October 1st. And the total number of separations is going to take some time. We don't know because people haven't all filed for unemployment yet, but those numbers, we only expect them to go in one direction, and that's up. Federal spending reductions, I talked a little bit about that. There's about $33 billion in federal spending at risk, not for us alone, but it's a lot of money at risk for everybody. Possible relocation of federal agencies. They've threatened to move agencies out of the District of Columbia. Those jobs if the people keep their jobs, they have to move. If they lose their jobs, if they don't move, they don't have a job. That's going to be a problem. More costs are being shifted to state and local government. And deportations are going to affect communities and businesses. And you have not seen deportations yet in Montgomery County like you're going to see. When this all started, there were only 16 ICE agents in the state of Maryland. See, not doing many raids with 16 people. And local government doesn't cooperate, and they're not mobilized National Guard to do this. Now, as they hire up their ICE army, there are going to be hundreds of agents in the state of Maryland, and we fully expect them to turn us into Chicago. Maryland is being targeted by the president. Maryland suffered more damage from Trump than pretty much every other state, and Montgomery County is going to get targeted because we are who we are. He hates diversity, equity, and inclusion. We do it, and we've been very blunt that we're not walking away from that. And we're going to be Montgomery County, but it's going to cost us to be Montgomery County. But in my mind, it's the only moral position you can take is to continue to treat people equally. He wants to erase history. We still tell our history. So we're going to have challenges with the federal government for sure. And shifting costs of state and local governments is going to be a big deal. If I have to replace their money for homelessness and their money for health care and their money for education, my approach to this is we have a fair number of people who benefited from the big, beautiful bill and their tax cuts. The state should take the opportunity to increase the taxes on the people who benefited from the big, beautiful bill. Not everybody, but focus the increases on the people who got the biggest tax cuts. And since they wanted the president to shift the costs to local government, they should expect that they're going to pay more because they shifted the costs to local government. I'm not shy about saying that. It affects very few county residents fall into the category of billionaires. And those that are, they probably appreciate the services and the quality of life they get here. But if people think we're going to be able to survive a shift of responsibility with no change in our revenues, I got to tell you, those two things don't match. You can't have less revenue and do more things. So we're going to have to make some tough choices. I know how I would make those choices. This is one of the biggest problems in Montgomery County. It's one of the reasons the schools are in so much trouble with their school conditions. Back in 2009, we were spending $300 million a year on bonds. And we kind of stayed along 300, moseyed up to there. I think we peaked around 340. And then this is the inflation line. That's where we would have been if we had applied inflation from FY09 to FY26. We'd be at about we'd have a capital budget of about $550 billion just to keep even with inflation. Not new projects, not anything else, just to stay with inflation. Instead, the county council starting back here, has refused to keep pace with inflation. So as inflation goes up, they drop capital spending to $280 million. So the project that went into the budget here not only will cost more by the time you get to 26, they're actually providing less money to pay for the things that are in the budget. This is not sustainable. And I've made a point of this. The council members know what I think about this. It is a death sentence for the county because you cannot build any infrastructure. And I'll go to the next slide because this gives you the idea of what inflates. So ride-on buses, more than twice as much. New schools per square foot, almost $500 a square foot more than it was 10 years ago. Fire engines, almost twice as much, and road paving is about $130 million more per lane mile than it was before. That's a lot of extra money. Our tax system was designed when we were a suburb. We had no big job centers in Montgomery County. Again, some of you have been here as long as I'm here. I've been here since 1960. And there were no major job centers. Silver Spring was as big as it got in Montgomery County. Rockville was the county seat. It was a tiny little place with almost nothing of substance, no major employers. NIH was probably the biggest employer in the county when it came here, and Walter Reed. But everything else, there wasn't much of a private sector, and most county people worked in the District of Columbia. That was our biggest employer. And that came about because when DC integrated its schools in 1960, well, before 1960, 54, white flight out of the district, people came to Montgomery County. Why did they come to Montgomery County? Because the real estate agents here advertised that Montgomery County was still segregated. And Montgomery County stayed segregated largely until 1967. Almost all the land in Montgomery County had covenants on it that said you can't sell or rent to a black or a Jew. Sometimes Syrians and other groups were thrown in there, and Catholics, but primarily blacks and Jews were barred from renting and owning property in Montgomery County. When those come off, a lot of people start coming here, but a lot of the people who first came here came out of that wave of people who were nervous about integration, didn't want to be in DC when they integrated. This is my favorite slide because people always tell me our taxes are too high. So this is a chart of Montgomery County, Frederick County, Fairfax County, Howard County, Prince George's County, Reston, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. The gray-black line is residential taxes, and the orange line is commercial taxes. So here we are. That's everybody else. Everybody else has higher residential taxes. Most importantly, everybody else has higher commercial taxes. Private sector in Virginia, if you're in Fairfax County, outside the special taxing districts, your tax rate's $1.16 almost as a resident, but businesses pay $1.28 on commercial property. If you go to Howard County, residents and businesses pay the same at $1.33. If you go to Prince George's County, they're at $1.37. And Prince George's County is that high because their costs are the same as ours. Their police and fire and teachers are largely paid like our people are paid. Their housing values are significantly lower than Montgomery County's. So for them to raise enough money to pay people competitively, they needed a much higher tax rate. So that's where the $1.37 comes from. But here's Reston, Virginia. They're at $1.36. Commercial properties at $1.49. If you're in Tyson's Corner in a special taxing district, if you're in Tyson's Corner, which is several special taxing districts, you get up to this level as well. So people supposedly are fleeing to Virginia, commercial people, to pay more taxes than they pay in Montgomery County. Doesn't make sense. They're going there for a reason. In Virginia, the commercial sector asked the state government to give the counties the ability to have a higher tax rate on commercial property than residential property, on the condition that the counties took the extra tax revenue and put it into development of infrastructure that would be critical for growth, particularly transportation in Northern Virginia. They raise hundreds of millions of dollars a year for transportation. Montgomery County, we've kept the same rate for residents and commercial property the whole time. I've tried to get the state legislature to get the county the authority to separate the residential and commercial rates, or at least let us do special taxing districts like they do in Virginia. So if a developer is doing major development, which is infrastructure costs and school costs and everything else, that they pay a higher portion of the taxes so we can pay for the infrastructure. So far, the council has refused to support changing the rates. All they're doing is protecting these guys from paying what they would pay in other jurisdictions. And these guys are the ones who are yelling that, oh, you're a high tax jurisdiction. You know, we don't want taxes raised here. They claim to be protecting you. I have no intention of bothering you. I'm interested in them because they can pay more. And DC is the best example. We share a border. Residents in DC, their property tax is 85 cents. So it's 17 cents lower than ours. But commercial property, if your property is worth more than $10 million, you're paying $1.89 in DC. If it's worth $5 to $10 million, you're paying $1.77. And if it's $2 to $5 million, you're still paying $1.66. So in DC, they get a ton of their revenue to operate their government off the commercial sector. That's why they can pay daycare workers the same as they pay teachers, which is kind of what you ought to be doing, because it's very hard to hire daycare workers at minimum wage, particularly when you're going to require them to have college degrees. This is not going to work really well. But I point this out because there's so much rhetoric out there about Montgomery County's high taxes. It's just flat out a lie. It's a lie that's generated by the developers and their friends and the politicians who are their friends. And that's the narrative they want to tell. And they use Virginia's success and say, look at all the jobs that are going there. They don't tell you to think about why they're going there. And if we could build infrastructure, we would be where Virginia is, but we haven't done that. We were in the same place they were in 2012, and then we got lost. So that's my spiel for today. And you guys can ask me any questions you want. I should explain. We hold the microphones because people have a tendency to take the microphones and give speeches. So this is our speech protection.
Well, since you have such a constricted room where you can make changes, maybe we should concentrate a little bit more on things you can do that are outside of just the budget thing. And the issue that I would bring up is the crisis in the county related to independent living, assisted living, and memory care. Right now, and I have an example because my mother's moved from here up to a place up in Olney. Most of them are owned by private equity. Yep. We've faced raises of 10 to 20, 25% per year, currently spending $9,000 a month, and there's no price control from anyone. They do whatever they want, and once they get you in, you're kind of captured. So people in the last meeting with Alderbrooks were complaining about your tax proposal and maybe paying, I don't know, what was it, $300 a year more in property tax? At least that's what they were claiming. We're talking about increases of thousands of dollars per year when you go into assisted living. So why can't we get the county to regulate the pricing?
Because we have no authority to regulate it.
Why don't you? Because I heard
because it's a state issue at the best, if it's not a federal issue. But this county has no ability to regulate any prices.
So you mean we have to demand the state to give you the authority?
Yeah.
Are you asking for it?
Do I ask for the authority?
Well, is the county asking for it?
I've asked the state to step up and help us fund this stuff.
We're not going to do that. There Wes Moore sitting there next to the worst PE person in the country in terms of nursing care ripoffs at the football games. So I mean, he's not going to.
I don't know. I don't know the person you're talking about, but who is
the owner of the Washington Commanders?
Oh.
Was a big person in Apollo Management, which actually their nursing group is located in Bethesda. And go talk to the people in Wisconsin that got thrown out of the nursing homes by this organization.
We're trying to figure out how we can require them to meet our affordable housing requirement inside of providing services, and we're struggling to find the legal way to do that. We had thought we could just say you have to provide 15% affordable, like we do with all the housing that gets produced, and we've been told we can't include the cost of services in the rent, because it's a service, not a rent, and so we can't regulate that. If there are ways to do it, I'll keep trying to look for ways to do it, but it's been a frustrating place. And I think, like some of the other affordable housing issues we're doing, the county is going to have to figure out how we can step up as a partner and build some of these things. I'm not, we're doing this with regular apartment buildings. We've got to figure out, is there a model where we can make it work for some kind of care
So
facilities?
you're telling us that we have to lobby the state to change the law so that you can regulate here? Because, preferably they would let us regulate it, but I don't see any evidence of that happening.
Well, you might find legislators who are sympathetic.
Not so far.
Okay.
My question is, what kind of control county has on HOAs that go up in Leisure World? Do you have any control on that?
No. Nope. Are they going up in leisure?
In
rents?
certain areas, it's going way up.
You're talking about rents?
Pardon me?
Rent prices?
The HOA, the
fees.
maintenance, monthly maintenance.
We have no control over Leisure World.
Okay.
What control do I have?
Pardon me? It was just my question. Will you be interfere into those or not at all?
I can't interfere. So what you're asking me about a fee. What?
Isn't there a fee that the county has control over in terms of
Common ownership communities.
Yes. There was a large increase under consideration last year, and that was defeated. And I don't really need it, do I? It's okay. So don't you have that kind of influence? Maybe not control, but influence.
The power is with the HOAs, not with the county. The homeowners associations can reject the assessments. And you may have problems with with the structure of your homeowners associations.
So where might I have gotten the idea that the county council rejected an increase in the fee?
We had it was a small increase in the fee. It was not a big increase in the fee. It wasn't hundreds of dollars. It was a little bit per unit. It wouldn't have cost anybody hardly anything. And we don't get the money. It's the money goes to run the work that oversees the ownership communities. They're not county communities. We are in a role of having to provide services to that. So that's why you pay a fee, is for the cost of the services. Your money does not go to the general fund. It only goes to the organization that oversees the common ownership communities.
Be that as it may, it is a fee
Yep.
that the county has an influence over.
But it's
So I'm just saying, when you say you have nothing to do with it, but it's a fee that the county is influencing or raising or lowering or whatever.
But it's a fee to pay for services that you get.
Whatever the fee
Okay.
is, there was some consideration of increasing it last
Yes.
year. Okay, and that is a county issue.
Yes.
So you can't say you have
No, but that lack influence over what homeowners associations approve in terms of their budget or what work they're going to do is totally outside of the county. The only thing we have is a fee to pay for the organization that services the homeowners associations.
And the homeowners association has to pay that fee, and therefore the homeowners have to pay that
Right.
fee. So that gets built into our home.
Okay, but if
I'm
I
just
don't
saying,
have it, you won't get services.
I'm not questioning that.
Okay.
I'm just questioning the statement that you made that you have nothing to do with it. That's not quite true.
Okay.
The county does have something to do with it.
I collect.
Be that a small matter, and be that no matter what the fee goes to, and no matter who benefits from the fee, it is a fee that the county commission has some vote on
So
it.
what would you want me to do with the fee? Out of
I just
curiosity?
want you to admit that you know. That
I know
there's-
I've got a fee. I'm just saying that goes only
and that
to.
the county has some influence over what you're saying.
No, I don't. There's two different things. You're confusing my ability to levy a fee with my ability to make decisions in HOAs. They're not
No.
the same thing.
If you raise the fee,
Yeah.
the homeowner association is going to raise the homeowner association fee. That's all
Okay.
I'm saying.
So if you don't like the fee, would you prefer to have the services reduced?
I'm not talking about liking the fee. I'm talking about the fact that the fee can be raised by the county,
Yes.
and that if it is raised by the county, the homeowners pay it. Therefore, the county has some influence. You just said, oh, I have nothing to
Okay.
do with it. You may
I
not
don't-
have much to do with it, but you have something to do
Okay,
with
I
it.
don't consider
And
it
not
inf-
you personally, obviously.
I don't consider myself having any influence over the HOA associations here. I could set a fee differently, but we don't have authority over the problems you guys are dealing with, which I've heard about for years.
But if you set the fee,
You can cut the services in the HOA.
we're not talking about the services. We're just talking about the damn raise of the fee.
But that's,
You know what? Let's not, we don't
Okay.
have to talk about this anymore. It isn't going anywhere. It's a waste of time.
okay.
We have a couple of questions online.
Yes, we do. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. This is a hybrid meeting, and we do have participants at two of our community recreation centers in Wheaton and also in Damascus. Mr. County Executive, we have several questions here coming from those centers. The first one, what are senior grants?
What are what?
Senior grants. Grants.
Grants for senior programs. Somebody from my grants office want to?
I'm not sure what context they mean by senior grants.
Well, we said they're grants that serve, they go to organizations that serve seniors.
Okay, so some of those grants are with, with Aging and Disability Services. Many of our services we contract out or we issue grants. Sometimes one-time only funding grants that we may receive. Sometimes grants through the Office of Grants Management that different organizations, nonprofit organizations receive. So we have over 170-something contractors in Aging and Disability Services. So want to be specific about the types of grants. We can take that offline if an individual, whoever is asking that question, wants to follow up and get more information. But we have a host of community partners that we work with, either through a contracting process or they get grants through the Office of Grants Management.
Thank you. Also coming from Wheaton Recreation Center, will Montgomery County Police get body cams that can be used for language translation, interpretation?
I don't know that answer, but I can find out.
Does Montgomery County have shots fired locators?
Not that we know of.
Trash collection, what does this involve? I guess it's...
Truck drives down the street, picks up the trash you put by the side of the street. And is there anything specific around?
That was the question, and for the folks that are listening in, at those satellite questions, if you want to add to the chat more specifics, we'd be delighted to receive them.
So like I said, we collect general trash. In some parts of the county, we have food recycling. We're also collecting paper, cans, and bottles. And we're talking about food collection going universal. Food scraps being universal.
I believe we have somebody here in the live audience that has a question.
I'll be much quicker than the predecessors. I wish you would consider eliminating the bus-only lanes on Georgia Ave. They don't contribute at all to reducing carbon dioxide because the cars pack up at Randolph, Dennis, when you go just before you go underneath the Beltway. It's just hundreds of cars at rush hour backed up. We don't live inside the Beltway, Tacoma Park, where a lot of these kind of ideas come from. and this law is not enforced, and so it encourages scofflaws to go down the bus lanes, and it's just something that should be eliminated.
I don't agree with you, but I hear you.
Okay, I'm not going to say any more because I'm not going to belabor it.
Thank you very much, Mark, for coming to Leisure World. 10 of 12 means 2 left. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on where we go from here. I am fortunate to have 3 talented and high-achieving daughters. One was recently furloughed by the federal government. One was fired by her private sector corporation. And one is a minister working with the St. Joseph Center in Los Angeles to provide homeless services to their large homeless population. I like to think that your values are widely shared here in Montgomery County, but I do have to admit I once worked for the county as a poll employee in 2016, and here I wish I could say that everybody voted the right way, but we have a pretty big split, even here at Leisure World. 200 votes for Donald Trump in 2016 and 300 for Hillary Clinton. So, yes, we voted the right way, but it was a near thing. And I'm wondering, as you retire from your term as county executive, what legacy you leave and what message you would give to the next generation of county council members and our next county executive.
So I plan on being one of the next councilmen. I'm going to run at large again. That's where I came from. And before I was executive, I did 12 years at large, and I can go back and run again. And I want to continue to serve. Because I think it's important work, and I think there's a lot of work still to be done. I think, we've done some things that I think are notable. Our investment in social programming, I think, is critical. It helps lift people up, and it gives more people opportunity. Our focus on early childhood and our efforts to expand early childhood education, we've just opened our first program that goes down to the really young kids. We really need to figure out how we're going to get kids age 2 and above into programs before they hit kindergarten. I think we've started that, so it's something that we can build on. We've built record amounts of affordable housing, and we've done it by becoming a major actor. Instead of settling for a few units out of every project, we're actually beginning to direct projects and control projects, because when these are things that we build and we control, we can get the level of affordability we want. We can serve the breadth of people who need it. I'm not just getting what I can exact from a developer and calling it a day. So I think those things are really important. I think our commitment to equity and diversity and inclusion is also important. I mean, we acknowledge the value of everybody here. And when I've done a number of trips over the last 3 years to Asia, trying to recruit companies to come here. And we've also talked to companies, around here who, people who approach us about locating. One thing that we actually talk about is the diversity of this community. I mean, I was telling people a couple of weeks ago, you can come to the United States, you can find land anywhere. Somebody could build you a building anywhere, but are you going to be in a community where your people are going to be welcome? And, Montgomery County, going back to Trump's first adventure, when he went after, Chinese people, the Chinese community here was initially terrified. We were immediately out in the community saying, we're not going to do anything to you. You're not the enemy. You're here. We're going to look after you. And I think continuing to acknowledge our past, being willing to talk about racism, being just flat out blunt about how this county was created and why it was created the way it was and all the changes. We have a lot to be proud of in the changes we've made. But you got to tell the truth about how you got there. And because otherwise people don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. So I think those are things that we need to continue. I think our growth in life sciences is also pretty notable. We've got the first graduate level program at the University of Maryland. They opened up an institute for health computing, which was actually my idea. I don't mean like I said, hey, can you bring this here? I was like, can you create this? And it's in North Bethesda. It's now employing over 130 people. They're linking up and bringing AI research to life sciences companies in Maryland and beyond to help use AI to advancements in drug treatment. So those are things that I think we'd be foolish to walk away from. I think the county needs to deal with taxation. It's got to get the developers, or, not all developers are the same, but those that wield the power and the politicians who, rely on them, we've got to figure out a way to be clear that you cannot get a Montgomery County that's going to be a job magnet if you're not willing to invest in the infrastructure that it takes. And this is true at the state level too. And the state, and this goes back well before Hogan, has never put money into investments to make the state or the county more attractive. It didn't think about, when I look at decisions that were made by companies to go to Virginia, and I look at how little money in the scheme of things Virginia was able to put on the table to get people, and we're utterly non-competitive when we put money out. We have not been competitive. I know the governor is aware of this, and they're talking about how they can start playing. And the county, I'm painfully aware of this. We've put a lot more money into growing companies. We put out 200 grants, about 200, I think maybe is it 200 grants that are the $200,000 grants? It's a whole bunch of grants at up to $200,000 to startups to generate new businesses in the county. Those are the things you've got to keep doing. You've got to invest so people say, I want to come here. And you got to do something about transportation here, because it sucks. And, whether you're driving or whether you're, in a bus, buses are the only way we're going to be able to expand transit. It's not going to be done with subways at the cost of a subway. We'll never build it, ever, ever, ever. The Purple Line is the most expensive fiasco anybody's undertaken. It'll wind up at a $9 billion project with, all the payments on it. When I was on the council, we had a bus rapid transit alternative for it. It was like $800 million, and the Purple Line was going to be $1.8 billion, and they picked the Purple Line, and now total costs will wind up somewhere around $9 billion. So we need to make smart investments, but man, if we don't build the transportation, they'll continue to go to Virginia. And Virginia now unveiled their bus rapid transit plan, which is as extensive as ours. And the difference between us and Virginia is they've got the money and they've got a revenue stream from development that's going to pay for it. And we've got none of that. So if people who want to be leaders of this county are unwilling to look at what their competition is doing and mimic their competition, there is no way they're going to find the resources to build what they need to build. And you all got to hold people accountable for having some sense of vision and some plan, other than, Montgomery County's reaction is always, well, we just do less. We shrink things. This is not the way to move forward.
Mr. County Executive, we have here several questions coming directly from Damascus Senior Center. Damascus Senior Center had many spots for handicap parking. Since we're temporarily at Damascus Recreational Center until the building is refurbished, there are only 4 spots. We are at increased risk of falling during the winter, and the parking lot is very far away. Can we get more handicap spots at the rec center? That's question number 1.
I will ask my staff to look at that. We should be able to mark some spots handicapped.
Question number 2, many times our staff that leads our activities like readers, theater, have to leave to work the front desk as well. It seems we don't have nearly the staff many other senior centers have. Is there another full-time position that could assist our staff?
That's up to the rec department and the senior centers to make a request. If they identify that is a need, we will try to get it in the budget.
Another question from Damascus Senior Center. Our chair aerobics classes have doubled in size, and we have a wait list for almost every class. making it difficult to participate. How can we get more classes so we do not get taken out of our routines because the class is full?
Can you ask that person to leave an email, because then I can get a more full response from the rec department?
Okay, so this comes from participant named Joanne from Damascus Senior Center. If we can get that information, please, it'd be appreciated so we can share it with the county executive. Let's see. Are there any other questions in the live audience before I move to a rather long comment here?
Yes, I would like to ask a question about the data centers that are proposed for Montgomery County. Is there a study that's available that could be made? Because I don't see enough information to the general public about what is being proposed, the costs, the effect on the budget. And I understand that Governor Moore vetoed such a study at the state level. So I'm wondering about Montgomery County. Is there anything possible to address this?
The state regulations have made this pretty easy for people to do data centers. We know, well, there are already data centers here, and they're mostly small. There's nothing at the scale of the big Amazon centers.
The scale I'm concerned about is what happened in Northern Virginia.
Yes.
300 or something like that. Data centers, a huge number.
We do not have, we have, nobody's proposed anything like that here.
That's the question. Is there a study happening that might be offering us information as the choices we're making?
I don't know. I could talk to you about it later. I'm not sure what I would study.
I think the general public wants to know.
These are the things we're looking at. Water usage. The one center that's proposed is on the Potomac River. The good news is water's nearby. The bad news is, well, it's not bad news. They understand that the water has to go in back to the river at the right temperature. They cannot put heated water into the river. That is things that's a standard that data centers can meet. We've talked to them about, if you do this, you need to bring down your energy consumptions. There are steps they can take to reduce energy consumption. They need to do that. They're in a place where there's no impact on residents, which is a good thing. It's a place where there's a former coal plant. So it's not located in the way they are in Northern Virginia. And we don't have land here in the county that would lead to that. There aren't opportunities like were in Northern Virginia to build out these big centers. So I don't think we're going to get them at the scale that they've got them in Virginia. I don't know how we'd manage it. And I don't know how and I am with, we're trying to understand what happens to the grid. That's one thing we've been asking for, is to understand what are the impacts. If the center goes in, what's it do to the PGM grid and the PEPCO grid? The PEPCO's part of the grid down here, because we're not getting any new supply. So if this eats up whatever it's going to eat up, what are the implications for, at what point do you run out of electricity? I think is the biggest question. When do they consume so much that they'll get a guaranteed supply and everybody else will get rolling blackouts?
I need a general discussion, not a one-on-one response. I see Nature Forward offered, I think, a series of 10 meetings. We don't need 10. We need one or two public information sessions.
I can try to get my people to do something and bring in other people to.
This is a long comment. It does not finalize with a question, but I will read this. My name is Herman Hawkins, and my wife and I live in apartments next to the East County Community Recreation Center. We're both more than 55 years. We thank you for the many programs and support services you currently provide. They are all greatly appreciated. Please know that your kind and supportive staff are an integral part of your programs, and they too are appreciated. We participate in open card play, bid, whist, and spades, nutrition programs, and on-site health care. At White Oak Community Recreation Center, I have had blood pressure checks and been given a list of healthcare providers with leanings toward underserved groups, of which I am part. Being Black and male, it is comfortable to have healthcare providers who are sympathetic to my group. We're overrepresenting regarding poor health care outcomes and underrepresented in terms of services. My wife and I took a good Spanish class. Content and presentation were good, and more than that, the instructor made us feel welcomed. Students and instructor connected by sharing personal stories in English and Spanish, and at the end of the term, we went to a local restaurant to practice Spanish skills in ordering a meal. As a family, at this point in time, we do not make use of after-school programs, but friends have stressed the importance of these programs. Grandparents being an integral part of childcare in extended families have better outcomes in their lives when overall family life is better. Nutrition is an important service that the county provides, and we appreciate it. We wish this could be extended to 5 days a week. While Montgomery County is better off when it comes to food insecurity than many counties in Maryland, the need is significant. I have seen seniors at East County and White Oak centers taking advantage of many organizations providing food for pickup. With politics the way they are and a likely reduction in federal resources, it is likely that states and counties will have to do more. Please do.
We're trying. We just added $4 million, I think, to food, and we know we're going to have to backfill for the federal government. So we've already resigned ourselves to that. But there's a limit in how much we can backfill. We actually have to have the money to backfill.
Thank you. And we did get the email from that individual from Damascus,
Okay.
so we'll share it.
Any other questions in the room?
Cool.
Holiday Park has
Wait 1 second.
Holiday Park was supposed to be getting some new windows for it, and it's sort of supposed to have been started this fall, and we haven't seen anything. We don't even hear anything about what's going on. We know that, they came in and put in all the solar panels, and a lot of that electricity runs the building too.
Yep.
And so one of the things they were talking about is once we get these new windows in, it should bring the cost sort of even. So I just wondered how that's going on.
So I know it's in process, so if it's delayed, I can find out why, but the last time they told us about it, they told us they were going forward with the work on Holiday Park. The money's still there, the project's still alive.
So I have to pay my 2025 income taxes next April. And I'm wondering, I like the way you're running Montgomery County much better than the way I like the president is running the country. Could I send all of my taxes to you and none to him?
Yes, I will take that. I wish everybody would do that.
Anyone else? Going once? A brief statement? Okay.
Positive. Okay, I'm sorry. Hi, Mark. Thanks for being here. I'm from Baltimore. I left Maryland in 1972. I came back only recently, January 21. So there's a lot about Maryland. I'm clueless. But I caught you on Facebook one night. You were at Parkway Deli. And I kind of came in late and somehow lost you early. But you were talking about Fairfax County versus Montgomery County. I spent about 40, maybe a little bit more, years in Fairfax County. And I was shocked by the, whatever is keeping you from going forward like that and really helping to improve. So I would like to say, I want to hear more of your chats. This was great today for me because now I'm learning more about where I'll probably die. So anyway, I personally would like to thank you.
If you give us, do you get my weekly message?
No, I get nothing.
But
I will.
I've got people back here. I'll tell you how to sign up for it.
Okay.
Because I do something every week. I do a press conference. I also talk generally about things I want to talk about before I take questions. So you could see me talking about this issue multiple times over the years.
Can't hear it enough.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yeah.
I know you cannot run again as our county exec, and I'm rather impressed with what you've done. Do you have plans for the future where you could help us sally forth in this chaotic world of politics?
So I'm about to file, I've done all the stuff at the state level to run for county council. So there are 4 at-large seats, there will be 3 vacant seats. So I'm going to run for one of the 4 seats on the at-large council. So I'll be back, I hope. You guys can help me.
Any other questions? Going once, twice? Thank you.
Thank you.